Oh hey guys, welcome back. Today we will talk about audit planning and fieldwork, part 2. We shall start with audit risk.
The achievement of organizational goals and objectives. Business risk can be also lead to the audit risk because it is affect the financial statement that will be audited by the auditor. Now we are going to the main component of the business risk. There are three main components of the business risk, such as first, financial risk, second, operational risk, and the third one is the compliance risk. The financial risk is where risk arising from the company activity, such as overtrading in the transaction. The operational risk is risk that arising from the operation of business, such as loss of physical asset. The third one is the compliance risk, which is arising from non-compliance with law and the regulations. The example of the compliance risk is the breach of the Company Act of 2016. Now we are going to the audit risk. Audit risk is the risk arising from carrying out audit work. The audit risk is the audit that an auditor expressed an inappropriate opinion on the financial statement of the company. Example of inappropriate audit opinion in reports. First, audit report is unqualified but subsequently material error is found in the financial statement. Second, audit report is qualified but subsequently no material error is found in the financial statement.
Types of audit risk. Audit risk come from two main different sources, clients and auditor themselves. The risks are classified into three different types: inherent risk, control risk, and detection risk. The auditor is required to assess the risk of material misstatement in the financial statement as per requirement from ISA 315, identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement, though understanding the entity and its environment. The procedure that auditor use to perform risk assessment are inquiry, inspection, observation, and analytical procedures. We move to the first type of risk, inherent risk. Inherent risk is the risk clients' financial statements are susceptible. Inherent risk refer to the risk that could not be protected or detected by entities' internal control. This risk could happen as the result of complexity of client nature of business or transaction. Sometimes the nature of business could link to the complexity of financial transaction and require high involvement with judgment. The risk is normally high if the transaction or even involve highly in the human judgment. For example, the exposure in the complex derivative instrument. For the second type of risk is control risk. Control risk is the risk that potential material misstatement would not be detected or prevented by client's control system. Control risk or internal control risk is the risk that current internal control or clients could not detect or fail to protect significant error or misstatement in the financial statement. Basically, management are required to set up and assess the effectiveness and efficiency of internal control over financial reporting to make sure the financial statements are free from material misstatement. Why is the weakness of internal control leads bring to the auditor? Basically, if the control is weak, there is high chance that financial statements are materially misstated, and there is subsequently high chance that auditor could not detect all kind of misstatements. That mean to control risk could lead to the audit risk. For the last type of detection is detection risk. Detection risk is the risk that audit procedure used are not capable of detecting a material misstatement. Control risk fail to remove the error earlier. While detection risk is the risk that auditor fail to detect the material misstatement in the financial statement and then issued an incorrect opinion to the audited financial statement. The common cause of detection risk: improper audit planning, poor engagement management, wrong audit methodology, and lack of understanding of audit client. Detection risk is occur because of auditor part rather than client part. As mentioned, detection risk could be the result of poor audit planning. For example, if audit planning is poor, not all kind risks are defined.
Moving on to audit sampling. Audit sampling is the use of an audit procedure on the selection of the items within account balance or class transactions. The reason of doing this is to evaluate some aspect of the evidence. It is also the application of audit procedures to less than 100% of the items within an account balance or class of transactions. This is to enable auditors to obtain and evaluate audit evidence about some characteristics of the item selected in order to form or assist in forming a conclusion concerning the population. The purpose is to detect error and any materially misstatements. Also, to show or as a proof that the auditor has done his work. Selection of audit sampling. Firstly, simple random sampling, in which the cases are selected in a completely random way, which ensures that each case has an equal chance of being selected. Next, stratified sampling. The population is divided into groups depending on the characteristics they share in common with. The next one is interval random sampling. The population is arranged in order and the first case is then selected at random. The other cases are selected at predefined intervals. Then we have the characteristics of audit sampling. First, random sampling. A random sample is chosen where each item of the population has a specific chance of being selected. Next, we have representative sampling, in which samples should be representative of the differing items in the whole population. Thirdly, we have simple random sampling, in which all items in the population is given a number, then the number is selected at random to be examined. Next, we have unpredictable sampling, in which the client should not be able to guess or know which of the items will be examined.
Next up is the factor affecting sample size. Well, what are the factors affecting sample size? First factors is the population size. It is generally relevant in a very small populations. Next factor is the precisions. It is the level of confidence and the precision interval are related in that for a given sample size, higher confidence can be expressed in a wider precision intervals and vice versa. Next one is the materiality. It is fundamental to modern auditing and with all populations being samples, materiality should be considered in fixing the sample size. And the last but not least is the risk. In the case of the high-risk area, large samples will be desirable because high confidence levels and narrow precision intervals are required. Next, we shall moving on to the method of sampling. First method is the random selections. Random selections ensures that all of the items within a population stand an equal chance of selections by use of random numbers tables or random number generator. The sampling unit could be physical item, for examples like sales invoice. Next method is the systematic selections. This method divides the number of sampling units within a population into the sample size, to generate a sampling interval. Moving on is the monetary unit sampling. This method of sampling is a value-weighted selections whereby sample size, selections, and evaluations will result in a conclusions in monetary amount. There are several steps involved in monetary unit sampling. First step is to determine the sample size. Secondly is to select these samples. Thirdly, to perform the audit procedures. And the last one is to evaluate the results and arriving at the conclusions about the populations. The haphazard selections, however, is a sampling method that does not follow any systematic ways of selecting participants. For example, this method will require the auditors to stand on a busy corner during rush hour and interviewing people who pass by. And the last method is the block selections. These methods involve selecting blocks of contiguous items from within the populations. It is rarely used in modern-day auditings because valid reference cannot be made beyond the periods of block examine. And the last element of audit sampling is the types of samplings. First type is the selected method. This method used for all items and specific items. This item then will be examined. Next one is the sample size. There are two categories of sample size. First one is the statistical samplings. This type of samplings uses the law of probabilities and it's usually practiced by big companies. Next one is the non-statistical samplings. These samplings uses random selections and pure judgment in selecting samples. It is quite different from the statistical one. It is also easy to use and usually used by small company.
Next is reasonable assurance. Reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance regarding material misstatements, but it is not absolute. Audit standard states that auditors should test a big enough sample so they can provide reasonable assurance. The bigger the sample, the stronger the assurance provided. Reasonable assurance includes the understanding that there is a possibility that material misstatements will not be prevented or detected on a timely basis. To achieve reasonable assurance, the auditor needs to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence to reduce audit risk to an acceptably low level. This shows that the auditors are confident that there are no material misstatements in the financial statements, which shows that they exercise their professional skill and care. In conducting an audit, the high-level objectives include obtaining reasonable assurance as to whether the financial statements are free from material misstatements, thereby allowing the auditor to express an opinion fairly, in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. That is all from us. See you next week.